just might welcome now Konstantin and Michael. Apologies, my pronunciation. So Konstantin, I've been to a presentation in London, I think, with Craig Larman of this case, which was quite early on, I guess, comparatively. And I found that a really fascinating session. And obviously reading the case study is, I think, one of the most impressively thorough case studies I've come across in this sort of space. And Michael, we've just been chatting about him really doing all sorts of coaching and different sorts of work. Technical coach, working with developers, working with lawyers, working with product management, product ownership. So yeah, I'm quite in awe of the skills that Michael must possess to work in all those different domains, especially in the sort of organization we're talking about tonight with BMW. So yeah, can everyone welcome Konstantin and Michael? Thank you so much for giving up your time to join us today, this evening, and over to you.
Good. Then I'm taking the screen for this short presentation. Just checking that I'm on the right page. So, okay. So thank you for having me and Konstantin. This presentation is about huge, less huge at BMW Group, and especially for the autonomous driving campus. At BMW, we do have several cases of less instances, but we are focusing here on the autonomous driving group. Konstantin and I have been involved heavily. And here you see also it's only a snapshot of the first 2.5 years. The whole department or the whole organization in this part is still moving, and we are focusing here only on the first 2.5 parts, and the case study is also only on the 2.5 parts. So why did BMW started even this? Just bluntly speaking, it's saving the future for the company with the different key aspects. BMW traditionally is building cars, vehicles, premium cars, also motor vehicles and so on. And there had been a shift at that time, and still is going on in the market, moving away from dumb vehicle that it can only drive towards assisted driving with speed limits, with autopilot and so on, towards the full automatic driving. And this is the story about. BMW wanted a seat at the front at the whole thing, not only being buy-it in for the mechanical part, but also building the brain that is driving the vehicles, and therefore saving future revenue and also future speed in the market. So, going into the meat of the whole case study is we want to be flexible. We didn't know a priori what needs to be developed, in which directions the company needs to put focus on. Therefore, flexibility was a key in our whole organization, and also several steps we introduced had been aligned with the order of improving the flexibility and also the quality in the execution of this. If you're going into the Q&A, I have seen several questions that is pointing in this direction, and Konstantin and I are lucky then to answer some of your questions in more detail than we are doing it right here. How we did this? This is only a short outline and short outlook from the case study. First, we increased the number of teams involved or areas involved. Each of these areas blocks indicating 7 to 8 teams. Therefore, we had here 8. Yes. Question? Okay, no question. You see here we expanded over the years from only one area, meaning 8 teams, to about 10 areas, about 100 teams, and how to get them integrated into the product development at once, and how we are moving it in accordance for once on the legal side, also on how to interacting with each other, and also on the technical side. Therefore, I pulled here a technical called loop diagram out of the case study. In the lower part of the case study, you see it also about the green build and the importance of green builds and the continuous behavior, integration behavior, just as a short outline. Now, shortly introducing Konstantin here on the left. Konstantin is throughout the case study have been a Scrum Master and an Agile coach in the organization of BMW. And myself had been focusing on an Agile coaching side throughout the case study period, and also with a focus on technical. So, and this is only the short introduction to this, and now we are ready to receive questions. And for this, I'm deactivating my screen, so you can see us in person for the ones who are raising the questions, and also Konstantin and myself in replying to your questions.
Well, actually, I'll start this off as a warm up, but I'll flick this off and just add the question to the chat. So we've all heard the quote, think and act like a politician when introducing change, not like an engineer. So at what point during this experience do you think this was applicable, and how has this affected you for all your future engagements?
Yeah. So I'll start off. It's well, basically when I learned about LESS, and I was so excited about it and wanted to introduce this to the company, my first attempts were, oh, let's just do that. This is so cool. And this is definitely a wrong approach. The decision makers don't want to hear that. What they want to hear is what problems this will solve. And it might be even true that they don't know about the problems they are having. So you need to make problems transparent. You need to maybe even write a price tag for the problems that there are, what costs do those problems cause to the company. And with all that realization, then you can go into, okay, how is it that we can, what are the possible solutions that we can implement in order to solve those problems. So this is basically one approach. And for the future, I learned one thing, don't try to sell less. That's it. Try solve problems. And depending on the optimization goal of the company, you might discover that, or the company might discover that less is less might help them or not, or what is behind less. Let's look at it this way.
Also, this statement and this thinking, acting like a politician and not as an engineer, is also extending way beyond applying less to an organization. It's basically applying to any change. Imagine if you're going onto the street and you would like to buy a car from a deal maker on the street. Are you likely to buy the first car blindly, or would you like to have a good feeling about this change of life? Because buying a car is not as inexpensive as buying a pair of shoes. Therefore, you would like to invest even more time in making sure that this is the right direction. Therefore, every time you are thinking about changing a situation, figure out what your opposite one values. Maybe values more like safety, more like statue, more like lining out a career model, and therefore you need to figure out which kind of arguments may suit this change better. Konstantin made the case for the transition or adoption of less in BMW, but this is also true if you are thinking about moving an organization from a waterfall model towards a Scrum model or an Agile model, regardless of less or not less.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Patrice, floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, so just using that continuous integration flow as an example. So can you walk us through a bit of a story on how that affected the actual culture and or structure? So how did that, even in that space, what sort of changes did you see structurally and from a cultural perspective? Because I've had experiences on the ground, but I'd just like to hear what yours were.
So your question is, yeah, I guess so. So your question is, what changes in culture happened due to the continuous integration behavior?
Yeah.
No, this is interesting twist in the question. So let me put the stage and trying to explain the culture before that. If you read the case study, there had been several groups, 2 major groups before, and these had been mostly focused on research and prototype in development. The research development had been mostly in the wake of how we are doing research as a PhD in an individual code development. Therefore, there had been close to no integration. The integration only happened as soon as hardware had been involved. Therefore, they had increased the integration boundaries, but only on kind of on the level we need to do this now. So this was kind of the culture from before, very isolated, not even team level, but also on personal level. This was start
of course on rapid prototyping platforms.
Yes, on the rapid prototyping platform. Putting the stuff into the vehicle was on the rapid prototyping platform. On this side, Konstantin knows more, but this rapid prototyping platform changed over time due to several struggles. And the final rapid prototyping platform even had been abolished as soon as the whole product had been more closer to the actual vehicle, to the actual hardware. And therefore, the additional changes had been happening there. This all influenced the continuous integration behavior and also the culture that had been lived here. Right. From the first signs of we are doing it all on our desk, on ourselves, like a PhD, writing up, explaining stuff, and then putting it all together, or putting it on my desk together into the simulation and rapid prototyping platform. The move was first integrating it to a new rapid prototyping platform without a vehicle. So the whole simulation is on one machine, as long as the machine is powerful enough, and then it's going into a closer in the bigger systems. This first had been introducing massive changes because the people, or the researcher mostly at this time, I would call them, had been first confronted not only aligning words but also concepts, and these aligning of concepts had been changed the way of working and thinking for them. Therefore, this was one of the first cultural changes. First, very athletic, then we need to think on a loosely basis about aligning some concepts. And still, this had been 2 major groups. One group that had been focused on automated driving and hourly automated driving. Konstantin knows the words here very, very well.
Partially automated and fully automated, things like that.
Yeah, it's really amazing how playful German can be with words. Yes, this was one of the first revelation in the culture. Not doing it on my own desk, but doing it in a slightly bigger group, but still in simulation and only on small locations towards the real integration onto the hardware, also simulated hardware, and then the actual start into the bigger culture and frequent integration into the hardware change the culture again, because here the developers and also the managers figured out that not only the alignment on words is needed, but also in code and also in structures. And therefore, much of the code had a need to be rewritten, and also the learning needs to be invalidated in some points, because some groups invested dedication to one aspect, other groups to other aspects, and continued here, or we needed to facilitate here exchange of what are the concepts, what is the talking, and how to facilitate we are working in this, the whole stuff together. And one of the major points here that that improved the situation much was that the vice president of the department had been asking explicitly, please don't show me code, or please don't me PowerPoints, but let me sit in the vehicle and drive, be driven. And I hope I don't break any bad news. Nobody wanted to sit in the first vehicle with the big boss the first time, because everybody was afraid that the whole thing is blowing up.
That's hilarious. Oh, nice.
Yeah, and at least in the first years, some of us coaches know a particular track on the German Autobahn where the vehicles are test driven, and I told some of my friends, please drive careful at this lane.
Isn't that what you say to all your testers in the first round? Just be kind in the first round.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. So you sort of moved away from it works on my PC culture,
Yeah.
and also moved away from that, and then moved towards demonstrating working software. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And not only putting the developers into it, but also the boss.
Cool. Sprint review. Nice. Thanks.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that question, Patrice. Good discussion, I think. And I had a very, very simple question, which was how many people were working in synchronized sprints, perhaps at the end of that case study period?
They were working in synchronized sprints around 100 teams.
100
Around
teams.
100 teams.
Yeah. And therefore, then synchronization sounds easy, but isn't not that much easy. And for this, several of the structure from less we built up over time. And this was also one of the reasons why we started with slow migration first.
Yeah, so in terms of number of developers or people in those teams, do you have a rough figure of that?
If you're counting only the teams, it's about 700, I think. If you're counting also the supporting stuff and also the joining systems, we are close to 800, 900. Konstantin, what do you think?
Well, it depends when you look at it. I mean, let's say 800 plus minus, around about 800.
Yeah.
It's sometimes going up, sometimes going down a bit, but it's rather going up.
Yeah. Yes, because what we shouldn't neglect is that it's not only the team but also the organization around it.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you are talking later about how the product owner is doing the stuff for 700 people or 800 people, then we can go into details there.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I think there's some people that might say that's never happened before, that one product owner has worked with 700 or 800 people, but I guess that might be something you can talk a little bit about at some point with the area product owners as well.
Question. I was just looking at the video before, and the mention was there's about 1,800 people in the group, and the offices is the equivalent of 3 football fields. And I'm thinking about the starting conversations about organization change. And then if I recall, Konstantin, you were the lone nut in the trenches at the start. So what were those conversations like with you know, the executives at the top? And can you talk a little bit about, you know, those challenges, if you can?
Yeah. Yes, of course. So we need to go back to beginning of 2016 for that. So this is where the autonomous department, as it was then later for the less adoption, this autonomous driving department was constructed out of people of 3 different other big departments. So in the past, before 2016, some people across BMW contributed a lot to developing advanced driver assistance systems. And we figured out that those, well, looking at the whole organization and then looking, okay, those people are all in different organizational units. And the first step was, okay, we don't want those boundaries between the people. Let's bring them all together into one. So we basically constructed a big department out of 3 other departments. So we merged some. And of course, the first thing that we saw is that structures, processes, and everything, and all those the original departments were different than in the current one. We also had 3 different locations just within Munich. So all of this led to the motivation, I would say, increased the motivation to change that. We definitely wanted a just one location. So within the innovation center in Munich, there was no space. It grew too big. So we, our senior vice president then at that time, he found this place outside of Munich, and he basically managed to build this campus for us that can host 1,800 people. So this was like one step, co-location. But then what about organizational structures and processes and all of this? And this is where we started the discussion mid-2016 with an external consulting company, and continued 2017, where we brought in Mark Briggenzer, and also where our managers met Craig Larman as well. And this is where the conversation started. And we basically, in the case study, I described that there was a migration team and an executive team. So we continued to work together on a daily basis and try to define how is it that we want to work in the future, and how is it, what kind of an organizational structure and processes do we need for that? And at the beginning, it was just far away from less, until at a certain point where we just asked ourselves, is it actually possible to do whatever we want to do? Is it actually possible to do within a less organization? And we started to challenge that. And after some time, we figured out, well, yes, it is possible. There are no, we couldn't find anything that would be impossible. So then the decision was taken, okay, let's go towards less and have a less organization. And yes, that was the starting point. So the decision was taken, and then we started the first less adoption. This was already then August 2017. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Okay, good.
Daniel, floor is yours.
Yeah, great, thanks. Yeah, my name's Daniel from Sydney. Yeah, it's really impressive what you guys said, like in terms of the size of the teams that you have, working on, on this big program. So I imagine you would have, sorry that I joined the meeting a little bit late, so I might have missed what was discussed earlier on in the first 10, 15 minutes. But I was just wondering, I mean, you would probably have Scrum of Scrums in this case? And how many level of Scrum of Scrums would you have altogether there? For so many teams to work together. And then the other thing is also, do all the teams align on the sprint cycle? And then do you also do PI planning, and do all the teams do all the PI planning together at the same time?
Trying to understand your questions. Let me break it down a little bit. So are you asking whether we're doing Scrum of Scrums?
Yeah, yes.
No, it's completely something different and less.
All right, then. Okay, it's different. All right. So it's basically all the teams do the Scrum together, or what? Yeah.
It's like defined and less. We have 8 teams per requirement areas, round about 8 teams. And then you have multiple requirement areas. Each requirement area is having one area product owner, and there is an overall product owner with one backlog. PI planning is something from SAFe, so it doesn't exist in less.
Okay.
There's of course PBR and sprint planning. So I'm not sure whether I answered your question. It's just to clarify that.
Maybe I try to build a bridge here.
Yep.
What Scrum of Scrum is, Scrum of Scrum varies in implementation, what it's mean and what it's about. Basically, Scrum, or in most cases, Scrum of Scrum is trying to align the Scrum Masters how they work together across several areas in our arts, agile release trains. What we are doing in less here is not Scrum of Scrums, but we are trying to foster direct collaboration between the team members. So the coordination is directly between the team members, not via the Scrum Masters. The Scrum Masters are also, of course, essential parts of the whole organization, and therefore they are aligning also themselves, but not in order to structure the work on the team or coordinate the teams for the teams instead of the teams, but to coordinate their own work for changing. And therefore, in less, there is the concept of communities, not community of practice, but just communities. If you look it up, the term in the less books, and these communities are about sharing and learning. And here, the Scrum Masters also joined in and shared and learned. They shared what they had experienced, and they tried to figure out what is the cause for that and how to tackle these kind of situations. And therefore, tried to improve their understanding and also their own abilities to tackle these kind of situations. But it's not about coordination for the teams. This coordination between the teams in the team coordination is directly on the team member levels. If they are, for example, if team A and B, for example, is working in component C, and we do have kind of a community that is kind of focused on these components, then they are talking in this component and these communities about this, but it's not directly structured this way. Otherwise, the inter-team dependencies and coordination is directly between the team members or the product backlog.
So when it comes to sprint planning, the team members discuss among themselves, and then they bring it back to their respective teams. And then when they do their sprint planning, they sort of like align on what needs to be done in the next sprint and so on.
Not exactly. You're missing the step of the product backlog refinement.
Okay.
Normally in the product backlog refinement, the team members are in, or the PO or the area product owner presents what is the next step we would like to go, what is the strategic next goal. And then the team members are pulling their mind and figuring out what needs to be changed. And this is not only restricted to one team, but to the whole area, or in some cases also to other areas, requirement areas.
Okay, all right. I think I sort of got what you mean there. Yeah, but I guess the product owners for each of the team needs to be. So you have one product owner for a few teams. You mentioned earlier. Is that correct? Or?
Not directly.
Not really.
You have if you have one product, you have one product owner.
All right.
And then this one product owner should manage all the teams as long as he or she is capable of.
Mm-hmm.
There is, by experience, a sweet spot about 8 teams. One person can manage in his or her mind, and therefore the idea of the requirement areas coming into play. Therefore, we do have one product owner and several area product owners, and no team product owners, no team managers.
Okay, got it. All right, sure. Good, thanks. Yeah.
Welcome.
Nafis, far away.
Hi, thank you for sharing all the lessons from the case study, both Michael and Konstantin. I guess I want to just ask a follow-up question on the thing that you mentioned in your previous answer, where you were saying, and then we decided to use less. And I guess I'm sure there is a lot behind that statement. So I'm sure there was a lot of decision making that was happening. I think what I'm interested to hear is that what was happening behind that, what were the choices, what were the challenges, and of course, as change agents, we might have a different understanding of what would or would not work for the organization, what kind of change appetite the organization does or does not have.
Yeah,
and I guess I'm trying to understand from a leadership point of view, who were the final decision makers of what to do, what not to do with their organization or their part of the organization. I guess I'm trying to understand, how did that decision making happen, and how did you
sure. Yeah, so I would like to take us back to the why, right? Why to change at all? Michael presented this at the beginning a bit, with a few statements. One thing that was there, and I think this is a very, very critical ingredient, is that really all managers and decision makers agreed and had agreed on that. As we are organized right now, and as we are the way that we were working at that point, if we continue this way, we will definitely fail. It's like 100% sure. So the question was not whether to change or not. The question was into which direction to change. And I also described this a little bit in the case study in a few sentences. And there were many proposals, what to do, how to do, what to change. And they seemed all easy because they could be implemented into the current structure without actually changing much. So one of the vice presidents called it more of the same. And looking at all of that and comparing to a more substantial change, then we discovered that, well, if we have more of the same, if we just relabel stuff, we will be back to square one, and we know that square one is not an option. So therefore, the decision was there was an easier path to say, okay, we need to take the hard way. And in terms of decision makers, yes, many decision makers, even the CTO of BMW was involved. And as soon as he gave his go, and as soon as he gave his go, then we started with the actual adoption. Does it answer your question?
No, gotcha. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Mary. I apologize for being late because my PC had crashed earlier. Yeah, I actually enjoyed reading the 60 pages of your report on the less massive adoption. Just looking at that during the adoption, actually necessity collaboration with the department within the BMW Group as well as the vendor who did not use the less. So I just wondering, what would that, looking back on the significant changes in the teams, is there anything you could do it differently to shorten the learning curve in the team implementation that we can learn from? Thank you.
Shorten the learning curve. Oh, that's a good question.
It's a simple answer. Just hiring people that already know about Agile in a more professional way. But obviously, this is not really an option. Therefore, shortening or lowering the learning curve is really a nice question, but you can do it in some places, but not in all places. Therefore, you need to brace for long changes of long journeys of change.
So this, there might be another way. But it's not fully shortening the learning period or learning duration, but maybe shortening the learning duration for a certain amount of people per time. Go slower and with smaller areas. That was one thing. Another thing, of course, I think I also mentioned that we did a few, I would say, novice Scrum Masters mistakes by having junior Scrum Masters working with one Scrum Master working with two teams at the very start of the adoption, right? So this was absolutely no. So what I would do differently today, have experienced Scrum Master and have Scrum Master to team 1-to-1 ratio. And then, of course, keep this first requirement area way smaller than we started. We started with 7 or 8 teams. Keep it much smaller, like 4, maybe half of it, right? 4 teams, and do all the learning with them until they get going. So that could speed this up. Not sure whether it will, but this could speed this up. Yeah.
One part of the learning was also that during the first requirement area we started aligning the concepts before we started the adoption. There was a hinge that there is a big division between the understanding of the concepts in talking and speaking, thinking, and also in implementation. But in the first area, we witnessed it, and we need to put it somehow working. And it was an idea to use also the first area to build up a viable architecture for the build-up and also fast onboarding of the other teams. But this idea struggled a bit due to some pre-plannings, waterfall pre-plannings we had in our management from before.
Okay, thank you for sharing.
I've got a question added here by visiting Thinker, and if you're on the line still, the floor is yours. I can say your question. So, are the teams fluid or do members change frequently? I imagine people love working at BMW. Is there a long-term view in the hiring approach?
Actually, since we started with the less adoption, in my whole BMW career and the time I spent there, this is the first time that I see teams being stable. I'm not saying they're 100% stable. Of course, there are some changes, but the stability of teams, if I would like put it on a scale from 1 to 10, increased significantly. So we have really now, if I go into a company and tell them I have a team that is now, don't know, that they are already 4 years together as a team, and say, oh wow, that doesn't happen here, right? So, but of course, the other direction is I go to another company and say, I have a team there 4 years together. So yeah, okay, ours are already 20. It's a matter of perspective, but I would say for BMW, this is one big step, that the longevity of that team of teams is increased.
Right, I think we've had Samir there with a hand up for a while. Hey,
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I'm more interested in regards to culture change and mindset resistance of, you said there was a waterfall. Yes, they had a why. Yeah, everybody clapped. Yeah, we go that way. But then they go back to their desk and I'm thinking, wait a second, you're going to do all of this and shovel it over there. And where am I going to be? I'm not going to be project manager. I'm going to be now Scrum Master or whatever. Like, how long was that period? And how many people actually left because they couldn't adjust their mindset? Because there was a lot of shuffling, I could imagine, and a lot of people were not happy with this. And especially also pushing it from top down, having a leadership on your side, even between leadership from, yeah, we all go, we want to go that way. We know why, but all of this change, that's a lot of turbulence, and they're not going to get bang for the buck for quite some time.
Yep. Yes.
So how did that go?
So first of all, it was not a top-down approach. It was both top-down and bottom-up. That's very important to mention here. This you can explicitly see or experience in this approach of executive team and migration team. So we had all hierarchy levels there, up to the level of vice president. So that's C-2, C-level -2. So up to that level, we had everyone working together in one big room for about 3 months, discussing, figuring out everything that we needed to figure out about that change. And we invited very often other people to join and discuss with us. We also communicated the status quo of those discussions frequently to the rest of the people. And we gathered feedback officially and unofficially from those people, and we incorporated everything. So from that point, very important to note is that the adoption was top-down and bottom-up. The other thing about removing the roles and what's going to happen to people. Yes, that happened, of course. Yes, the reactions ranged from, oh yeah, I'm happy to do that, finally, to oh my God, that's the end of my life. We had all kinds of reactions. Of course, well, we dealt with that. Actually, I would say not many people left, especially at the beginning. It was rather the opposite. People saw what was happening, like some really radical change at BMW as this one, and people wanted to join. I would rather put it different, the other way around. Yes, of course, it was not zero. So the amount of people that left is not zero. There are some people that they said, "Yep, well, we cannot. I cannot put up with this. I want something else." Sure, they left.
Okay, so I know people left. I prefer the ones that leave. I hate the ones that sabotage from inside.
Yes.
So they passive aggressive. They say, yes, yes, I agree, we do that, but they continuously working against the progress. So how did you deal with that? Because you must have had with so many people, in every 10, there must have been at least one odd one.
Yeah, unfortunately not good enough. So we didn't deal with that good enough. Also described in the case study, those people left at some point themselves. But we could have limited the damage by dealing with them much earlier. And simply respecting their opinion and helping them to get to go somewhere better for them.
Would you describe implementation of less as a evolutionary or revolutionary, the way it happened in BMW?
It happened definitely revolutionary.
Okay,
Definitely
so it was a big bag.
Big times. It was a big thing. Yes.
Okay.
But putting this into perspective, we are talking here about 2 or 3 departments merging together, but the whole BMW is 50,000 people more. Therefore, we are starting.
BMW with over 100,000 employees. We're talking here about just 800. Right. So, of course, this step at autonomous driving, it was loud at BMW. Everyone spoke about it. Some adjacent departments to autonomous driving, right? So we have 2 departments next to each other that are supposed to work with each other. Some of those adjacent departments said, "Oh, cool, we're going to go the same way so that it's easier for us to work together." So it became actually bigger. Some departments said, no, we are going to stay as we are. We are going to observe you first, and maybe we will make the step into that direction or not.
And some fortified in part.
Pardon?
And some fortified even. They did put up additional boundaries and additional requests and so on. So it's not only the enemy from within, but also your neighboring enemy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But this is our profession of as change agent, dealing with this in a good manner.
Yeah. So this started so many years back. Does BMW have a self-driving car now? Do they have the value delivered?
No, don't. And I think this is publicly announced in the news. No, not yet. Right? Still working on it, but not yet.
Some level had been released.
Is your question answered? Because there are a few more hands.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Up is Angela.
Oh, hello. Hi. Thank you. Thank you. My question was just going back to your earlier answer about the learnings, the earlier learnings. I was just curious what you found when you had decided, okay, 1 Scrum Master per 1 team. What had happened when you had more Scrum Masters, 1 Scrum Master over more than 1 team? What you found had gone wrong, where you'd say definitely stick 1 Scrum Master per 1 team?
Well, basically, this is a combination, right? We started out with 1 Scrum Master per 2 teams, and the Scrum Masters being junior Scrum Masters or inexperienced Scrum Masters. This is a problem. So the Scrum Masters learn themselves and at the same time are supposed to help 2 other teams. this is just too much. You just burn out the people. And then there is the learning that is supposed to happen in the teams is basically not the one that should have happened, because the novice Scrum Master also does mistakes, which mistakes that an experienced Scrum Master would probably not have done. And putting this all together, I say, okay, no, first of all, start with, when you start the less adoption, start with one experienced Scrum Master per team, get the teams going, and then change the ratios and bring in novice Scrum Masters and help them become better Scrum Masters. Yes, this is something you could do, but not at the very beginning. That's very, very dangerous to do, and leads to longer learning period. And of course, another thing is, this is also somewhere described in the case study, that the switch from manager-led teams to self-managing teams, it doesn't happen overnight. You need to help the teams become self-managing. I always like to do the comparison with children. If you have children, of course, you want them to be self-managing, completely independent at some point in their life. But it doesn't happen on the day they are born. You spend decades with them, helping them become this way, right? You also set limits. You also have some authority over them. You give them some freedom, but also some authority. So the same needs to happen when you go from manager-led to self-managing teams. And this is one thing we completely, like really 100% neglected. We thought, oh, those are actually adults, experienced people, smart people. Well, they can be self-managing from one day to the next. That's fine. I mean, what's the matter with that? I mean, you just, okay, now you manage yourself.
Good luck.
Good luck, exactly.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Just a quick sort of check on time. We're about 2 minutes off 9 o'clock, and I know Patrice is up next with his question, but checking in with yourself, Michael and Konstantin, are you right to extend this slightly, or what's okay?
Yep, that's
fine. Yep.
No worries. Patrice, far away.
Just getting this into my head, that what you've been involved in is like working with a car manufacturer who's worked with a more or less model around dealing with complication rather than complexity. So now they're shifting from mechanical engineering and component type of design to in a more emergent pattern, right, to complexity, right? So I'm just trying to get it through my head that I'd imagine this organization would have a lot of specialists working in component teams to assemble a complicated motor car initially. But now they're shifting to a complex, an area of complexity where it's emergent, and they're learning about AD and autonomous driving. What's the one real message that you've got here that you know, what's the one fundamental lesson that you can share in changing that mindset? That's a paradigm shift, right?
Yeah.
So what's the strongest message that you've got around changing that mindset? That's a massive change.
It doesn't happen overnight. And that's one important thing. And of course, what I noticed when people talk about less adoptions and implementations, what I noticed is that often the technical excellence is somewhere dropped among the lines. People forget about that. I would put way more focus on that. This is so much significant. And when you come from such a component-based organization towards a shared code shared code organization with teams, and not just teams but feature teams, right? You reach the limits of your technical agility. There is this phrase: your technical agility constrains your business agility, right? And this is so true. If you change the organization to be adaptive, but your technical stack is well, not so much adaptive, then you don't gain the benefit. So from changing the organizational structure towards adaptiveness, you should focus really fast towards your technical agility and start improving that. And I think improving this technical agility is more painful than changing the organizational structure.
Yeah, lots of.
If you're talking here about about technical abilities, it's also about learning how the current code is working and also how the future code is working. And this is mostly constrained about what is the actual domain we are in. And this is also putting an extra emphasis on the product backlog refinements because these hadn't been done previous to the adaptation, and this is one of the major pain points throughout the whole adaptations, also throughout the whole 2.5 years. As you can have the best brains working at something, if they don't understand the actual problem, the actual what is to be gained, they're just smashing high IQs into the wall without getting the actual target.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel, you had a question.
Yeah, Derek. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I've got a couple of questions here. The first question is, do you have development partners, who work together on the same project as you? Like, people from Bosch or Continental, and do
you
they
mean from vendors?
Yeah, your vendors. Yeah, do they participate?
Yeah, plenty.
All right. So that they also adopt less as well and work together with you, or do their engineers work as one of your less teams in one of your less?
That's a good question. I mean, that's a very good question. For the hardware parts, definitely not. But for the software parts, now the question is, do they pretend, or did they really change something inside their company? And this is a question that I couldn't answer so far. So do they pretend to have less? Did they just organize teams and Scrum Masters and they said, okay, here you go, BMW. Those are the teams and their Scrum Masters, and they are definitely synchronized with our sprint cycles. That's for sure. So the sprint cycles are synchronized with all teams around the globe. It starts at one time point and it ends at the same time point. The question is whether the vendors did that for real, or is it just theater? And this is something that I couldn't answer yet.
Okay.
It was a hard discussion throughout the forming of the contracts and the alignments and agreements with the other vendors. How to integrate them, not only on the code level and on the project boundary level, like sprints, but really integrate them into the learning, into the actual problem solving. Because if the vendor teams are kept basically outside and only thrown bones in forms of Jira tickets or predefined predefined requirements, then they are not part of the solution. They are just part of implementing. But what we would like to have, and also we talked about this, that they are also including themselves into how to solve this situation best, and therefore the inclusive collaboration would be advised here. And this here we would need to say that we had really high motives and high ideas how to get this rolling, but due to several reasons, it was kind of restricted what we could achieve. Partly what is permissible by a German law, but basically, if you do things right in the contracts and how the people are interacting, this is kind of okay. But also how the department and managers aligned in their working, in their being, and in their own statements. And this had also a huge influence on how we could interact and integrate our software vendor partners here.
All right, good. Yep. My second question was going to ask whether, as part of the cross-functional team, you would have the hardware engineers working in those teams as well. I think Konstantin might have already answered my question already earlier. You have
initially initially it was the plan, but we never came that way. We never came that far.
No, all right, never came that far. Okay, so
Yeah.
you basically have software engineers. I assume you have system engineers, UX engineers, verification engineers. They're all part of the less teams, yeah?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay. Got it. Thanks.
I think Rowan had a question on pace of rollout.
I'm not a fan of the word rollout, by the way, but it was a bit of a cheeky one. Just that observation about there being 70 people brought in.
Yeah.
And whether that was the right pace, given the health of.
No, it was not the right pace, and it was not. By the way, I saw your question, Miro. It was not the coaches who pushed for 70 people. It was the BMW people who pushed for 70 people.
Right. Got it.
Right, because it was a fixed. This particular part was a fixed price contract, and it said, well, 70 people. Well, if I reduce the amount to, let's say, 40, then I need to pay twice as much to, I need to pay the same amount of money because of fixed price at a later point. And well, it was definitely not wise to do it this way. It would have definitely been better to go slower with way less people, to do the steps with way less people at a time.
Yeah.
But I may also state that the first area with the first 70 people, we could have done it slower, but we managed it. The actual culprit was increasing the number of areas faster afterwards. You've seen the graphs in the case study. We ramped up, I think, in 1 year. I think in 2 months from 1 area to 2 areas, then to 6 areas, and then to 10 areas, which implies huge changes with not fully aligned statements and minds and so on, and processes. And this was the actual challenge here that led to several dysfunctions.
Yeah, and I guess the question was also just how do we have incentives around the rate of bringing people into an adoption? What's going on with those? Because in Australia, I think a lot of people seem to talk about the number of tribes that have been spun up or the number of agile release trains, and that's kind of the headline you hear about adoptions in big organizations of certain other scaling approaches, I guess. And that may or may not be the right pace of change. It may have actually been scaling up something that wasn't really healthy yet, wasn't really working at that small scale yet. So I just wondered what your thoughts are on that, because you can have consultancies and just in the contractual arrangements and what people kind of incentivized to concern themselves with, people that think that's the thing to be doing faster and rolling it out quicker.
Yeah, number of tribes adopted, or reduced trains adopted, or product areas adopted is definitely a misleading metric. I agree.
Exactly. Yeah. So the metrics that we see today are very short-term metrics. More interesting metric would be to see what's 5 years later. What happens there in that organization 5 years later? Is organizational structure still the way, still as flexible as initially set up? Are requirement areas actually requirement areas organized around customer-centric topics, or did the organization go back to development areas organized around architectural elements? So those are questions that I would focus on, and looking at a multi-year time frame to observe that. All the, well, what should I say? Well, we did a less adoption with 800 people. Oh, wow, good. But it's more important what happens in 5-10 years.
But Konstantin, if you're on the playing golf, you can say as a manager or as a coach, I have transformed 800 people right now. This is more, this you can make a statement. But if you make the statement, I have over 5 years successfully transformed an organization, and this sticks an organization with all these abilities over 5 years, you will only get a water, but no real drink. This is this kind of play is here if you are thinking about psychological safety in managers. If the managers are from the past attuned to presenting on metrics, on KPIs, right to the next quarterly periods, then you will receive these kind of metrics like number of people onboarded, number of teams onboarded, number of externals included into your areas, regardless if it does make sense for the whole organization in the long term.
Thank you.
Just looking at the time, I'll just shoot this one off from the board, and I guess not including the Scrum Master aha moment and also the rollout pace. But if I could turn into a genie right now and give you gentlemen both 3 wishes that you could have granted before you started this journey, what would they be and why?
Sorry, are they achievable wishes or are they just magical stuff that's not realistic? Sorry, I had to qualify.
Maybe just expressing our wishes, and then you can take your turn and say this is achievable or not.
Michael, do you want to go first?
I go first. First one is try to go slower.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the same. Go slower, way slower. Yeah.
Yes. The second one is pay attention to technical abilities, to technical flexibility.
Same here. Just wanted to say technical excellence. Pay much more attention to that.
Yeah. But this may be also due to our experience here in the situation, because the organizational flexibility we had over a certain period of time. Therefore, this is not in a highlight now. But now it's about complaining the technical excellence here.
The third one, Michael, yours?
And the third one, I think 2 is enough.
Okay, then I go with the third one. Third one is don't make a think out of that. Many do a real big think out of that. Oh, we do a less adoption here. Just I would like to see a less adoption where the people don't even know what less is. I think it has much more ownership than saying, here is less, here's this thing, let's adopt it.
Mm.
And I would wish to have done that without without mentioning less at all.
No. This is also one of the guidelines in less, that you don't throw over processes or ideas, but you try to foster the creation of the idea by themselves. So renting, so you're owning the ideas and the process rather than renting it from the outside.
And to achieve that, would you encourage Go C and maybe some basic systems thinking, or what would be the kind of tools to help?
These are the major tools we are using in less, and this is also the way less had been coming into existence by Go C, by Buzz and Greg. They had been seeing at Nokia in the first place. They had seen, they had modified some elements, run experiments, wrote down experiments, and did many of the system causal loop diagrams or system thinking exercises by themselves, and also with all the afflicted parties, including managers. So less is more or less born by experience and thinking about it, not by inventing something out of the blue.
Thank you. Checking on the time. Are there any final questions, folks? Boom. Back to you, Rowan, then.
Well, I think it's time to wrap it up, and thank you so much, Michael, Konstantin. Yeah, can everyone express their thanks to have this opportunity? Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone.
Thanks so much for everyone for coming and asking those questions and participating. I found it very insightful. I hope you have too. And yeah, keep reading that case study if you haven't already. I think there's loads in it and loads I'm going to reread. So yeah, look, thanks. I hope we get to see each other again and keep these conversations around the scaling challenges alive, because I think Australia needs more understanding of what's going on in other parts of the world that has forged a lot of, I guess, paths through some of these challenges that we find here in Australia that perhaps we haven't quite explored this way yet. Thanks, everyone. Great to see you. Hopefully I'll see you some of you next month.
Thank you. See you next month.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Thanks,
Rowan.
Cheers and have a great day, Konstantin. I know it's early morning for you.
Thank you, Rowan, Derek, Michael, and Constance. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Nice.
Bye.
Thanks for organizing, Rowan and Derek, and thank you
For
very much,
organising, and Derek.
Michael and Constance. Yeah,
Cheers, guys. Great to see you.
yeah, likewise. See you later.
And Derek.
Yeah, see you around.
Thanks, Derek.
Yeah, see you,
Thanks,
Derek.
Derek enough, do we? Thanks, Derek. Yeah, did a great job tonight.
Well done. It was, I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Thanks for sharing all that.
See you at the next one.